and producer, 5'11" from Blanchester, the Cow Killer, Casey McCollister, and comic engineer, standing at 4'8", the pride of the West Side, Elliot Rearing. And your host, weighing 150 pounds, soaking wet, from Hamilton, Ohio, Ace Fowler.
Welcome into a special day, a solar eclipse day of Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. I'm Trace Fowler, as always, joined by everybody in the room. I got accused last week, gentlemen, of saying everybody's names except for Lindsay, so I'm going to embarrass her right now and say that it's Lindsay Davis because she didn't think that I knew her last name, although when she sends an email, it says Davis right in the middle of the email. So Reed Mouse, welcome. Hey. Lindsay Davis, welcome. Hey. Elliot Rearing, welcome. And Casey McCollister, welcome.
Hey, Trace.
You know, when it rains, it pours. And what I mean by that is you sit up here at this desk sometimes and you wonder, what are we going to talk about? What in the world do you talk about today? There's nothing that happened yesterday in sports. There's not a whole lot of new topics to talk about. And then this weekend hits. And you find yourself looking down at the list of headlines that Elliot will get to in just a minute.
Sure.
And you realize that there's just a plethora of things to discuss. So much so that the Reds, if that's something you're interested in, will be towards the back end of this show. Why? Because college basketball dominated this weekend, and mostly women. That's been, quite frankly, the talk of sports. National headlines has been centered around women's college basketball, and rightfully so. It's been entertaining, and it's not just Caitlin Clark. You have UConn, who's been a dynasty for years and years and years. You have a legacy coach in Gino Auriemma. And then you turn around and you have a program that has been the top of the echelon, if you will, in South Carolina. They are undefeated. Staley is an unbelievable coach. And I would be interested to see, and we'll have this discussion later, that maybe she doesn't throw her name in the ring of the fire of who's going to take over the UK job. Because late last night, news broke, of course, that John Calipari seems that he is out on his way to Arkansas. We'll discuss that. I think he got bullied. I think John Calipari got bullied. We'll talk about it. Did he? Was it the right thing to do for him? Is UK going to get themselves in a position where they're closer to Indiana basketball than they might think? I don't know. Purdue or Purdue tonight. They obviously face the juggernaut that is UConn. Can anybody beat UConn is the real question. I mean, genuinely, UConn, if they got to play any kind of 5-game or 7-game series, it is zero chance that they lose that. Zero chance. All I heard on Saturday was how tough of a game they played. Oh, my goodness. We got a ball game now. UConn's getting challenged. I turned the game on second half. What do I see? Yeah, they hung around. Kudos to Alabama. They got some playmakers. Sears is a dog, certified dog. But the problem is that UConn, they are so well-rounded. They can literally beat you 3 or 4 different ways. They got guys that if they have an off night, it doesn't matter. They got 4 other guys that can pick up the slack. And the truth is, it was a 14-point win. Yeah, you can say the score wasn't indicative of the way the game went. It wasn't close. But they won by 14 points in a Final Four game. And everyone's convincing everybody that they were somewhat competitive. And then you have the Reds. Obviously, over the weekend, they won a single game against the New York Mets. And it took everything in their power to win that game because ultimately it took a come-from-behind win in the bottom of the 8th inning on Saturday, so they did not get swept. We'll discuss maybe somewhat of the issues that they have on that ball club. But before we get to all of that and more, we have headlines as always. Elliot, you got a lot of them. I don't know where you're going to go today, big boy.
But let's knock baseball out of the way. We'll just knock baseball right out of the way.
So Is that a pun?
No pun. This is very serious sports talk.
Okay.
Headlines from baseball. We'll start with the Reds. They lose obviously yesterday 3-1. They fall in the series 2-1. Abbott went 5 innings. He gave up 7 hits and 2 walks, but somehow, by the grace of God, only allowed 2 earned runs. There was a third that was scored on the error by Espinal. Shout out to him. We brought him over for defense. We have Brent Suter. He dominated, only allowing 2 hits. in 3 innings of work, didn't allow a run. Ellie's hit streak did end, but his on-base streak continues. He did get on base with a walk. The Reds only had 3 hits yesterday. Now, I will say the Mets aren't a great team, but their pitching has been very good to start this season. And that was before coming into Great American Ballpark this weekend. They're a top 10 ERA squad, so it's not like we were going up against a nobody here. The Mets can pitch. TJ Antone, obviously one of the bigger stories of the game. He left after a pitch, and it appears, I don't want to speculate upon speculation, but appears his time with the Reds may be coming to a close. They're going over tests. They will see. I hope that's not the case. But eventually, I think Trace was the one who tweeted this yesterday, and I kind of agree with him. Eventually, your body is just gone. It's too far gone. When you go through and you battle through 2 Tommy John surgeries, nobody expects you to get back on the major league mound. He did it. He fought all the way back, and it just seems like it almost seems like it's an Andrew Luck situation. Like, why are we going to continue to just beat down your body? What's at what cost, right? So shout out to TJ Antone. He fought all the way back. We'll see if he's able to stay in the majors. And I hope he is. Jonathan India obviously was another story yesterday. Hit in the wrist. I thought that was it for Johnny India, and that would have, it did seem like the at bats after it affected it.
Boy, that would have really done it for you. I mean, you would have walked in here today, and the season would have officially been over.
I would have canceled it. That would have been the end of the season, 100%. I was ready to tweet it yesterday, but I'm like, you know what, Elliot? We're gonna take a deep breath and we're gonna relax. We're what is it? Game 9. We've just finished Game 9. We're gonna take a deep breath. We're gonna relax. Everybody's gonna be okay. Hopefully, God.
How many times have you canceled the season so far? Just once?
Just once.
Okay.
Just once.
We'll
Ian Jabot looked great in AAA again, or wherever the hell he's at.
That'd be Single A Dayton.
Yeah, sure.
Home of Wing 1410.
Congrats to Ian Jabot. You look great, buddy. Around the league, MLB, Ronel Blanco of the Astros, he set an MLB record yesterday of 14 consecutive no-hit innings. He didn't finish it off, but the Astros did win 3-1 in the Battle of Texas. Red Sox, they crushed the Angels 12-2. Giants, they came back in the bottom of the 8th to beat the Padres 3-2. Rays got a win over the helpless Rockies. And the Cubs, Reed's here to talk about the Cubs. The Cubs won the series this weekend against the Los Angeles Dodgers. They win 8-1 yesterday. Reed, what are your thoughts there?
It was so funny. I was watching this game yesterday. It's in the 4th inning. It is dumping rain.
Yeah.
And the Cubs have like a 6-0 lead over the Dodgers. And you can just tell the Cubs are doing everything in their willpower to get to the 5th inning. They get to the 5th inning, they get this series win. It is literally raining. They stop the game. Don't put the tarp on the field. They stop mid-inning to go put Diamond Dry all over the field. They did that twice in 1 inning just so they can get to the 5th inning. They eventually did get the tarp out there, and then they finished the game out later. But they were just trying so hard to get to the 5th inning so that they could just cancel the game and say, that's it.
Well, shout out to the Cubbies. Shout out to the Cubbies. Marlins, after starting 0-9, they take a win against the Cardinals yesterday, 10-3. That was a funny one, too, because it was raining there as well, and people were worried that the Marlins' only win of the year was going to get negated. But they hung on, 10-3. White Sox, they fall to 1-8. The Royals beat them yesterday. White Sox are sad. Brewers, Athletics, Yankees, they all get victories. Diamondbacks, Orioles, and Phillies, notable losers yesterday. The NL Central looks like this after a week, after the first week of baseball, first week and a half, whatever you want to say. The Pirates are in first place at 8-2. Reed, shout out to Reed, he called that one. Brewers are in second at 6-2. Cubs a half game behind them at 6-3. Reds are in fourth at 5-4, and the Cardinals are half game behind the Reds at 5-5. That's all for MLB from this past weekend. NBA news. I don't watch the NBA, but here's the thing. There were some notable things I saw on the old tweeter yesterday, so I'm going to mention them here. 76ers beat the Spurs in double overtime, Wow. 133-126. Tyrese Maxey of the Sixers, he dropped 52 points. And the Rockets, they were up 129-126 against the Mavericks yesterday. Jabari Smith goes to the line for the Rockies. They're up 3 points with like 8 seconds. Missed both free throws. Mavericks go down, give it to Dante Exum, some guy that definitely shouldn't be shooting a three. He sinks it at the buzzer to send it to overtime, and Mavs win it in overtime, 147-136. Tough. Final four, Trace did mention it. NC State, their miracle run ends 63-50. It turns out that Edey guy might be actually pretty good. DJ Burns shut down entirely. 8 points for him. And meanwhile, Edey had 20 points and 12 boards. So, again, shout out there. We have UConn. I watched this game in its entirety. I was with the side on Twitter who was saying, this is a great game. We might have an upset here. And then you just remember at halftime, it's like there's a switch that clicks. Like the first half for UConn is just practice because they've had a decent amount of first half close games. They're like, all right, we're warming up. We're having some fun. We're getting used to it. And in the second half, they just dump it all on you. So they win 86-72 over Alabama. They have covered their spread in 11 straight tournament games. 11 straight tournament games. The spread tonight 6.5 against Purdue. We have the women's championship game yesterday, and shout out to the women. I was going to go. We'll talk about them in a second, but a quick shout out for starting their game in the afternoon on Sunday when nobody's working a ton. So shout out to them for putting it at a decent time instead of 9:20 on a Monday night. They knew what they were doing. Iowa, they started out hot. They went up 27-20 after the first quarter, but it was all South Carolina after that. Gamecocks, they win 87-75 in the national championship, capping off a perfect 38-0 season. Caitlin Clark led the way for Iowa with 30 points. She added 8 boards, 5 assists. Camila Cardoso, led the way with 15 points for the Gamecocks. South Carolina outscored Iowa 37-0 in bench points. They out-rebounded Iowa 48-25. Not a recipe for success if you're Iowa. Caitlin Clark is literally it's that meme of the Lamborghini and that terrible shack, like that little terrible garage. That's tough to watch. That's tough. But again, Iowa fought, and we're gonna again talk about it there. But Caitlin Clark might have changed women's college basketball forever. The same way Steph Curry changed basketball 100%. Maybe not. They might not be the GOAT in their sport, whatever you want to call them, but they certainly changed the game for the better. And that's it. Men's game tonight tips off at 9:20. Reds are at home against Milwaukee tonight at 6:40. Aaron Ashby takes on Graham Ashcraft. Akshay Bhatia is the last piece of the puzzle for the field at the Masters. The Masters field is set. That takes place on Thursday. Those are your headlines in sports. We have another headline, but obviously everybody knows that one, and we're going to talk about it today.
What is it?
That would be Coach Cal.
Yeah. All right. A couple quick things here before we head to break. We'll talk about Caitlin Clark, her legacy, and why are there so many haters in the game in which they should be thankful for Caitlin Clark. That and more on 1410 Wing AM. All right, welcome back in. Just ran through the headlines from Mr. Elliot Rearing. Thank you, Elliot. And I'll be honest with you, over the weekend there were so many things that were going on, and I just kept seeing the same thing happen over and over and over again. And I don't really know what to make of it yet, because I think that sometimes maybe you get caught up in the moment. Perhaps you say things that you don't mean. But I don't understand where all of the discourse comes from when it comes around Caitlin Clark and some of the other folks that obviously exist in the WNBA. I'm looking right at you, Diana Taurasi. Diana was a great player. We all know she was a great player. But the idea that Clark has to win a national championship to cement her legacy is lunacy. It's lunacy. Can we at least just talk like as if we, are going to be honest about all of this? And I know I'm going to say some things that are going to ruffle some feathers, and I don't mean anything disparaging by what I'm about to say, but what I'm going to say has to set up what is so impressive about what Caitlin Clark has done. Nobody in the national media, in the grand scheme of sport inside of this country, has done more for women's college basketball than Caitlin Clark. I don't care if she's the best player. I could care less if you think that she's being propped up or overrated or whatever it may be. It doesn't matter. She brought eyes to a game that desperately needed it. The WNBA, the same league that Diana Taurasi plays in, the same league that some of these other haters play in. And you know what? Let's be very clear. Dawn Staley came out yesterday, post-game, right after they won the national championship, and she had something very, very nice to say about Caitlin Clark. So before I go too farther, I do want you to hear something that somebody finally said out loud outside of just the folks that support Iowa basketball. Here's Dawn after the game.
Dawn wants to say one more thing. I really would just like to say that I have to congratulate Iowa on an incredible season. Awesome. And I want to personally thank Caitlin Clark for lifting up our sport. She carried a heavy load for our sport, and it just is not going to stop here on the collegiate tour. But when she is the #1 pick in the WNBA draft, she's gonna lift that league up as well. So Caitlin Clark, if you're out there, you are one of the GOATs of our games. That we appreciate you.
Thank you, Coach.
Thank you.
That's what most should be saying. That's what most should be saying, if not all. Because let's face it, we talk about how many times what is sport. At the end of the day, sport is entertainment. It ultimately usually winds up being a business if it garners enough eyeballs. We're seeing it right now in college athletics. It's clear as day that college athletics is slowly turning into what? They're not amateurs anymore. This is a professional league. If we want to hide behind the idea that they're amateur still, that's fine. We can do that. We can do the whole student-athlete bit. We can run the NCAA commercials all day long and say 99% of student-athletes don't turn pro in something else, whatever it is. But we all know that when they're in college, if you're playing at a relatively high-level program, there's money behind it, and that's fine. But the most important thing in business and the most important thing in entertainment is garnering eyeballs. It's getting attention. And she did that better than anybody. Yet you have other people just continuing, and it's so clear to me that it's just jealousy. So this concept that I see online about, she needs to win a national championship to cement her as one of the greatest of all time. Well, what are we talking about? She didn't go to a championship factory. If she went to UConn, if you took Caitlin Clark, if she didn't get overlooked, if Gino Auriemma just realized, hey, this is what Caitlin Clark's going to ultimately end up being, she's getting a full scholarship to UConn. But she kind of slipped through the cracks a little bit, wound up at Iowa. Unfortunately, she put Iowa on her back, and they went to their first 2 Final Fours in program history. And then all of a sudden now that's not good enough by Diana Taurasi standards? Well, yeah, if she would have went to basically a championship factory, she went to UConn, let's say she played with Paige, they would have won the national championship. So somehow, since she went somewhere else that was lesser than, makes her lesser than? I'm not seeing it. It looks clearly like jealousy. And it's a pretty stinky thing. I don't really understand where Diana thinks that this ultimately is going to lead to her. She's on her, Sue Bird and her do a show, or, they do the live watch along. It's like a Diet Right version of the Manning cast. Yet, there's nothing but slanderous comments the entire time for, I'm going to say it, because I'm going to be honest, for something that very little cared about before. That's the truth. The league that she's played in for 10, 11, 12, 13 years has been subsidized for 10, 11, 12, 13 straight years. If it wasn't subsidized, there wouldn't be a league. You know why? Because it doesn't matter how good of a basketball player you are, Diana. It doesn't matter. If people don't care, it doesn't matter. If you do the little things that make your team win, as sad as that is, and as much as that might hurt you, it doesn't matter. Because at the end of the day, if you can't garner eyeballs and you can't be entertaining, you don't have a product. And you know what you should be doing? You should be thanking the heavens above that you have a league and you have someone coming into your league that might just carry their own weight, might just be able to bring in enough eyeballs to where you don't have to rely on somebody else. And I don't understand the idea of keep stripping that away.
I have a couple things to say. I will say this. You mentioned if she went to UConn, what would have happened? I would argue if she went to UConn, she probably wouldn't be a household name. Because when you're a superstar amongst other superstars, you tend to get lost in the sauce. Now, she went to a school that yesterday, again, they were outscored 37-0 in bench points. There was literally nobody on that team except for Caitlin Clark. And I think that does help cement your legacy, or at least get your name out there, that you're a phenomenal basketball player when it's just you against the world. I will say this. And again, maybe this is ignorance on my part. I had never watched a women's college basketball game before this season. Never. I'd never done it, and it was never on my plan. I was probably never, ever going to do it. Caitlin Clark and Caitlin Clark alone, and maybe with the help of Angel Reese, they helped me watch women's college basketball for the first time. I watched several games this year. I watched a women's college basketball national championship yesterday in its entirety. The entire game. I would have never done that had Caitlin Clark not been a part of this sport. So if anybody's out there slandering her name, you're bringing. I fielded a text from my grandparents yesterday, who, again, no knock on them. I doubt they've watched a women's college basketball game before. They texted me yesterday, "What channel's the game on?" I'm like, "What game?" "Oh, the women's national championship game." Those texts don't happen if Caitlin Clark's not here. That's what she brought to women's college basketball. That's what she brought to the sport. We have Dawn Staley, the coach of South Carolina, thanking her in the postgame because that's how much she's meant. It's changed the landscape entirety of women's college sports. And that is what matters. If you want to talk about GOAT, I think using the word GOAT is silly. That debate stinks. They have to use it on First Take every day to get through their show. But outside of that, I don't want to use it. The GOAT doesn't matter to me. But I see multiple women now coming out, and Taurasi's one of them, trying to, I don't know if they're trying to besmirch the name of Caitlin Clark or demean what she's done. I don't understand it.
I think it's as simple as this.
Because I'm going to tell you right now, and this is no disrespect to the WNBA, but again, I've never watched a WNBA game. Guess who's going to watch a WNBA game when Caitlin Clark goes? I am. So to say if you're a woman playing the WNBA and you're going to disparage Caitlin Clark, this is going to help you. You're going to get more money. You're going to get more eyeballs. People are going to pay to come to the games. She changes the sport. She changes the landscape. And for that and that alone, I think she should be considered, if you want to call it the GOAT, whatever you want to say, whatever animal verbiage you want to call it. I think it's the greatest of all time. That's what she is, because that's what she's done for college basketball.
Well, I was going to say this. I think you brought up a pretty eloquent point at the beginning of the show, which is the style of play is the reason that it lends itself to be entertaining. We watch Caitlin Clark because she shoots from anywhere in the gym, and on top of that, she has really good ball handles, so where it allows her to do and make moves to be able to do step backs and shoot threes, and she's a very good passer. She's very Stephen Curry-esque. And you can say whatever you want about Stephen Curry, but he's obviously clearly never going to be one of the greatest of all time. He's not going to be put up there with Jordan. He's not going to be put up there with LeBron. But we can all agree that Stephen Curry has changed the landscape of basketball, maybe more than both of them.
He's the most influential basketball player ever.
100%.
Yeah, because I don't know if you have kids that play youth basketball now. Much different game than it was when we played youth basketball. I don't know if you've been to like a 10U basketball game. They're shooting threes from everywhere now, and that's because of Steph Curry. My question about Caitlin Clark is it meaningful change? Will it last?
I don't.
Because the ratings are unbelievable for women's basketball right now, but they're not. This isn't unprecedented. I don't know if you guys know this, but 40 years ago, they had similar numbers watching women's basketball. The 1983 Women's National Championship game had similar numbers to yesterday. Why? Because of a superstar, Cheryl Miller, Reggie Miller's sister. So my question is this just going to happen and it's a flash in the pan and Caitlin Clark goes to the WNBA and not meaningful change happens? Or has she truly changed the sport the way that we hope that she does, right? Because I think we all are hoping that it continues to bring eyeballs to women's college basketball and the WNBA. But my question is it that?
I think it has. I think it's changed. You can't lose. I don't know what I didn't see the ratings for yesterday's game, but it was 9 million for the Final Four. I think at least the TV ratings, people are going to be looking for that next superstar now. They're not going to. It's Caitlin Clark's gone and she's done. She's going to do big things wherever she goes, and hopefully she makes a ton of money because she's earned it. But I do think there's a scope where an audience is searching for that next Caitlin Clark. People will be looking now. Hopefully they'll find one, and I think they will. I think there's diamond in the roughs everywhere. Caitlin Clark just happened to be that in Iowa. There will be a school somewhere out there that has a star like her, and she's going to outperform and she's going to shine, and now we're going to be aware of it. Because before this, I didn't care. I mean, I say this, I don't mean to be disrespectful. I just didn't. I'd never watched. I'd never paid attention. I didn't care about women's college basketball. Maybe I should have. Ignorance on my part. But now I'm going to be looking for it.
I do think that there is a difference between 1983, though, and this time period. It's a 50-year, 40-year gap there. You got social media, more accessibility than ever before.
No doubt.
You're not going to just fade away. People will always remember Caitlin Clark now.
Yeah.
So I think if I was going to stamp my flag somewhere, I think that this is probably that opportunity that it continues to grow and not regress into a flash of a pan, kind of like what you were describing before.
All right, we'll continue this discussion and why I think that basically what we just had mentioned is very similar to a TV series. It's the exact same thing. Right after this on 1410 Wing AM. All right, welcome back. Solar Eclipse Day. Woo! Keep thinking, from 1 to 3 on 1410 Wing AM, we are 1 to 3. We are right. We're basically right in the heart of the race, which is the solar eclipse here.
Yeah.
So it's safe to say today might not. Maybe everybody will be listening on the radio. They'll just be hanging out in their backyard listening to the radio, or maybe nobody will be listening, or maybe somebody in the middle. Maybe it'll be the same. Who knows?
I have seen a couple clips on TikTok. I sent Casey one little newspaper clipping, but I think it was in Texas. There was a big clip going viral. It was 1979 was the last notable eclipse that covered a lot of the United States in totality.
Yes.
Which is going to happen today, and it was cool. It was again I don't know how many years, quick off the top of my head, how many years ago that is, 1979 to now, but it's cool them talking about 2024. And that's come full circle here.
Here we are.
I'm not a big science guy.
Yeah.
I don't really care about. I didn't know every school in the entire world is off school today. Apparently, because of this.
It's a big deal.
Are your kids off school for this?
They are. Yeah.
So everybody is. Okay. So just the entire world. I think that's kind of crazy. It is just 4 minutes.
Yeah.
But it is something. It's a once in a lifetime type deal.
Yeah.
And we will be one of the few states. Not every state has totality like it will be here. I did some science facts on that. So I think we're one of, I don't know, I don't want to say the number off the top
there's
of my head.
there's a line right through the country. I think the vast majority of people can kind of see whether or not what percentage they are within inside of totality. We've been fortunate enough, luckily we've been placed on this earth at this very time to be living right in the path of 100% totality, and we'll see what it has in store today. Hopefully we're not disappointed. Speaking of once in a lifetime things, I think that's exactly what this is with Caitlin Clark. That's the unfortunate part. But I had compared this situation with a TV series just a minute ago. We've gotten ourselves into a culture where it's you must be entertaining at all times or you lose the crowd. That's what this is. It's similar to a TV series. Do I think that there's going to be more eyeballs next year on women's college basketball than the year prior or maybe ever before? Yes. The issue I think that might arise is there's no Caitlin Clark. You can't replicate Caitlin Clark. You just can't. She's the all-time leading scorer in women's college basketball history. That's ever. That's not just going to come right through the doors the very next year. And if you don't have entertainment, then there just won't be people that watch. And I hate that it's that black and white per se. I hate that it's that clear to me that unfortunately I don't know if this translates to the WNBA. I don't. Because there's one thing that college basketball or college still has. And there's whatever reason, I can't explain it, but there's some type of nostalgia that comes with college basketball that I don't think is going to translate to the WNBA. I don't think watching Caitlin Clark try to go for a WNBA championship with the Mercury is going to resonate with as many Americans as it would have been if she's trying to take a team that's never won a national championship before to their very first title. You add in the storyline that that's where she's from. I'm sorry, but it just doesn't play. And I hate that it's that way for me. I would love to sit here and kind of raise the flag and say this is it, this is the turning point, but we do this time and time again in this country. How many times are we going to watch the World Cup? How many times are we going to watch a USA hockey situation to where there's some patriotism and the country's watching They're watching, yes, because they think the sport's entertaining, but they're kind of watching because it's an entertainment factor, a storyline that you can't replicate. And you know you're watching greatness. You know you're watching something that you've never seen before. It's the same reason that everybody's flocking to this part of the country right now, because they know they might not ever get to see this again. So I'm going to go and take my time and I'm going to watch it. That's what ultimately ended up happening over this last season with Caitlin Clark. The solar eclipse in the Iowa basketball story is very much the same to me. It's going to be here. You're going to enjoy it. Everyone's going to take it in. We're all going to praise it for what it was, which is greatness, and then it's gone. And guess what? 2, 3, 4 weeks from now, the solar eclipse won't be talked about. Maybe it'll be discussed by, scientists. But for the vast majority of this country, they're not going to care. They're not scientists. Was it cool? Yeah, it was cool. But it's not something I'm going to be invested in. There's one difference that Reed brought up, that you brought up, that is true today. You have a ton of entertainment options. If we're garnering the same amount of attention in the 80s for women's college basketball, and it went away with what I would consider less entertainment options in the 80s than there is now, then what makes us think that it's going to change or be different now that there's more options? High school basketball in this part of the country used to be a very, very big deal. I remember a time where I was basically, you can read the newspapers. It's not hard to figure out. You can go back to the OHSAA website and look up the attendance numbers for high school state championship basketball games. It used to be significantly higher. Maybe you could argue the basketball was better back then. I would argue there's just more opportunities to go do your time with other things. And unfortunately, that's what's going to happen. And I don't think it takes away from anything that has happened, but I don't foresee any chance in the world that, unfortunately, women's college basketball ends up becoming on the same slate or talked about just as much as the men's game like it was this year.
I was going to ask you, what do we consider successful growth then for the women's game? Is is a small regression expected? Yeah. But isn't that still a success then if it continues to be around the same number, right? Because it was never like this for years, and then it all of a sudden comes back to relevancy. And also at the same time, you said there's so many more options. Well, the same thing could have been said about the women's game. They didn't have a bunch of options to continue growing it. Right. It peaked and then it went away because there was no other options besides the men's game to go watch. They weren't putting the women's 64, the top 64 teams in the March Madness on ESPN. They weren't doing that. They weren't doing it on ESPN 2 or 3 because it was all crowded by the men's game. So
we will find out.
I think what Casey's trying to say is it kind of goes both ways, right? You're right. We're talking about the 1983, them getting 11 million viewers there. That's when there was 8 channels, right? Cable was in its infancy. Yep. So, there was less options, and it went away back then. Yeah, there's more options to bide your time, but it also pulled our attention away from those other options now. So it kind of goes both ways, where we could sit around and watch Netflix, Max, Hulu, whatever we want. We were sitting around and we were watching women's basketball. It was pulling our attention away from other things. Now, I do tentatively, cautiously agree that it's going to take a major dip next year, a significant dip, because Caitlin Clark is out of the women's game. But can it make guys like Elliott, who has never watched before, will he watch next year? Maybe just the NCAA tournament, or at least the women's tournament? Maybe. Possible. But it does go both ways, that it did pull our attention away from the other things that could occupy our time.
Let me ask you this. If you were Caitlin Clark, would you have declared for the WNBA draft, or would you have taken your NIL, taken whatever, $15 million, stayed at Iowa, and just been the leader of women's college basketball?
I think that it's a tough decision to be made because Caitlin clearly has the ability to go to the next level. I think it's best for the sport, and I think it's best for her if she would have stayed outside of one thing, which is a very big thing, the pressure and the ability now to not be able to do much better. There's only so she stepped up time and time and time again. You know, all it took for her was one lousy game in this entire tournament run to be called a fraud. One lousy game. One 40-minute, and again, I'm assuming they play 40 minutes. It's shame on me. 30, I think it's 40, right? Regardless, one single game where she shoots 25%, and then she'd be called basically overrated. I don't know. Like maybe that's not a good enough reason to not come back, but it just feels like she can't do much more at the level she's at now. But I will say I could be completely wrong about this. I think that she'll never have more attention on her than she ever would have been if she came back to Iowa for one more year.
I did
again.
I did see Nate Seltzer in the chat was saying that the tickets for her debut, I think in the WNBA, is for a lot of money. Those tickets are going to be a lot of money.
Yeah, and again, but that's fine. I'm not. Let me be very clear. Do I think her initial game in the WNBA is going to garner a ton of attention? Yes. I'm wondering about the sustainability of that. I'm wondering once we get 3 quarters into the season, is it going to be like Reds opening day where you have everybody's paying 3, 4, 5 times face value for opening day tickets, and then all of a sudden you look in the middle of July on a Wednesday night and the tickets are $2 to get in.
But I think that makes it interesting too, because if Angel Reese gets drafted and she takes on Caitlin Clark in a game, then that builds a rivalry. And maybe, arguably, some would say the very first big rivalry in the WNBA. I don't know too much about the sport to call it that, but I would certainly watch it. And I think that's what you're now seeing. So, you're not going to get 9 million next year watching the Final Four in the women's game. It won't happen.
What's a good number? I would say to answer his question, his being Casey's question, I think 20%. If they're able to retain anything like a 20% dip would be great. But I don't know if they're going to be able to do that. I really don't. I think it's going to be a pretty dramatic difference. And you know what? Give ESPN or ABC credit, Disney, I guess, credit. They're pushing the women's game as hard as they possibly can. You go onto ESPN.com and you have, basically equal headlines. If you try to watch back in the day, if you wanted to watch the bracket show, right, you had essentially just the men's the entire time. They didn't discuss the women's bracket at all. No. They do that now. So maybe you could argue that the marketing on the women's side has never been really existent before, so now it'll help. But again, it all comes back to entertainment. It really does. And you know what? You can say whatever you want about Caitlin Clark. Diana Taurasi, the rest of them, she might not even be that great of a pro. I don't know. I don't watch them enough to know. Maybe there will be guards that are going to clamp or lock up Caitlin Clark, and she's not going to be anywhere near the player she was in college. And if that's the case, that's not great for the WNBA, because ultimately people want to see people shooting threes from the logo. People want to see girls and guys doing step backs and fadeaways and just, again, being entertaining, having an entertaining brand of basketball. And that's I think that's where the jealousy comes from, in my opinion. And I understand why. If you're significantly better at basketball than Caitlin Clark, right, which I think that's what some of these women in the WNBA believe, and they might be right. They might be right. Unfortunately for them, if it's not entertaining, even though it's better, it just isn't going to matter. And that's ultimately what might happen with the WNBA. We'll see. Like, Caitlin Clark, there's going to be a huge step up here. Whether or not it slows her down, I don't know. But there used to be people. In fact, you can go back and with Masters Week being this week, I'll put my golf little plug in here now.
There you go.
When Tiger Woods came into the PGA Tour, and off the top of my head, I cannot believe that. We'll do it a cherry on top. The interview with Tiger Woods, asking a young Tiger Woods what his goal is when he came in, and he said, I want to win. And he said second place isn't good enough. And someone in the chat will let me know who it was. But anyway, he got laughed at, and they said, well, you'll realize out here on the tour, man, second place is pretty good. Now, it turns out that guy was kind of
Tiger Woods
just a little bit wrong.
Tiger Woods is another guy you don't watch on Sundays unless Tiger's playing.
The casual doesn't, and you're 100% right.
Correct.
So we'll see if Caitlin Clark does what maybe Tiger did to the PGA Tour. Maybe she'll do that for the WNBA.
Where can I put $100 on Caitlin Clark to win the NBA Celebrity All-Star Game MVP next year?
Oh yeah.
She's gonna be in that NBA All-Star Game for a decade straight. Every year. She's gonna be the headliner. As she should be. She should be.
They're gonna have a whole section, I'd imagine. It's gonna be her. I think it was Sabrina Ionescu who played Steph this year for the three-point challenge.
That's cool. That was awesome. That was awesome.
That is what they're gonna do, and that's what they should do. Casey, you had a point.
I didn't have much of a point other than just to kind of ask around, what do you think it's going to take to continue to grow it? My thought is just making these personalities like Caitlin Clark grow. I mean, Angel Reese, we didn't really know much about her until that finals game, and then she became a personality. She became a recognizable name.
Yeah.
Paige Buchers, I had no idea who she was until they faced off against each other against Caitlin Clark and UConn, and then this last Final
That's
Four
because
game.
you have better time to spend on other things, Casey. And I hate to be that brash about
Well,
it, but that's why you don't.
I'm asking, is that what it's going to take for them to build up?
It's going to take entertainment. It's going to take you to turn on your TV and watch some basketball and think, damn, this is fun to watch. And Caitlin Clark is that. But if it wasn't for Caitlin Clark, I hate to say this, but nobody's watching Angel Reese. Nobody's watching Paige Buchers because we've seen it before. We've seen great players before. We only watched because Caitlin Clark was pulling up from the logo. She shot wherever she wanted to shoot from. She scored 40-plus points half the time. She was the all-time leading scorer. We like points. We want to watch games that are entertaining. That's the only reason we watch. And I'm going to say it right now. I hate to be that guy, but we ain't going to watch anymore. You can act like you're going to. We can spend another 30 minutes talking like it. We're not watching anymore. And you know what? If I'm wrong, kill me for it. Come back next year at this time and kill me for it. But we will not be watching. All right. Calipari.
Well,
what do you do with them? Next on 1410 Wing AM. All right, welcome back in. I know that I probably ruffled some feathers. And you know what? If I'm wrong, I'd love to be wrong. But I hate to be right.
Let's do a solar eclipse fun fact.
Please.
Do a solar eclipse fun. We'll do that every segment now.
Okay.
Mexico, they will see the longest totality during this eclipse. That's one solar eclipse fact. Here's another, because I missed one for the previous segment. The total eclipse will start in the Pacific Ocean and it ends in the Atlantic. Boom. Fun fact.
Nice.
Science.
Do you know anyone that's gone on a trip for the solar eclipse?
I do know one person who did it. I met him on Friday night at the Reds
Evan
game.
did?
Evan's going to Illinois, I believe.
Yeah.
Illinois to go watch it.
My father-in-law went up north to be right in the middle of it. He's big into astronomy and stuff like that. He always tells me when SpaceX is doing launches and he watches live SpaceX launches. He's awesome. He's up at Indian Lake watching that today.
You know, you know what's awesome about today, before we get into Calipari here, is that I have no expectations. And the most fun, coolest moments of my life have come when I've come with zero expectations. I didn't know what I was getting myself into. I just assumed that maybe, this might be neat, and then it ends up being awesome. Had that experience, about a month and a half ago at the Grand Canyon. Honestly, no joke, thought I was going to walk, see a big hole in the ground, think, this is pretty neat. All right, we've seen 2 stops. Let's head back. I mean, I could go there and spend 2 weeks there. And I'm not even kidding. I'm hopeful today, not trying to put too much expectations on it, but I'm hopeful today that I get a chance to see it in totality. And I think, wow, I could understand why people drive 4, 5, 6, 7 hours to see that. We'll find out.
I like the towns that are like Hamilton here. Made a big bar crawl out of the eclipse. What are we doing? It's a Monday. Is it that big?
Yeah.
Cancel school, make a bar crawl. Let's do it all. Let's have some fun with it.
Yeah. Well, we shall find out. I'll tell you. Speaking of bar crawls, we have a guy that's worked in this office here at Headlines for every bit since we've been here. So that's about 2.5 years that we've been fortunate enough here to be at Headlines, and he's a humongous University of Kentucky fan. And Steve, his name. I came in here and directly was looking for Steve today because nobody has been more out on Calipari since I've ever come across any Kentucky fan than Steve. And he's been right every step of the way. I mean, that's not even a joke. Now, I always think he's Elliott of UK basketball. And what I mean by that is he's just all the time super negative. He's out. And this year, he even said, hey, they can't play defense. They'll get bounced the first weekend. Last year, he said they're going to get bounced the first weekend. And I just kept thinking, this team's too good to get bounced the first weekend. There's no way in the world this happens 2 years in a row. Sure enough, Steve was right. And now you have a situation where I think I don't want to proclaim that it's 100% fact, but I'm as close to doing this as one could be. He got bullied out of Kentucky. This wasn't a personal decision he made. He knew there was zero support there. In Kentucky, I mean, they couldn't have drawn it up any better. Calipari has a buyout, as we all know. Now Kentucky avoids the buyout, and they get what they want. Has there ever been a better executed, get pushed out of the building, drawn up plan than Kentucky just delivered? But are they going to be disappointed here in maybe a year or so that they did that? Because face it, Calipari, for all of his flaws, he got guys there. And yes, I get the concept that you could argue that that's Kentucky's Kentucky. You're always going to get some people there. Are you, though? Are you? Because Gillespie was there before, I remember. And he was pretty bad. There weren't guys there when Gillespie was there. And the question is that I have now is you open up, the grass isn't always greener. We had a pretty good debate here before we walked into the show as far as what do you do, not only if you're Kentucky, but now if you're somebody that wants to go to Kentucky. You look at a guy like Calipari who was 400 and something and 100, and he went to a Final Four. He won a national championship, and less than a decade later, everybody wants him out. Are the expectations too high at a place like Kentucky to want to go there? Now, I get money talks, but the names that are getting thrown out right now are who? They're guys that are at the very top, the very, very top of their profession. We're talking about like a guy like Hurley, who plays tonight for his second straight national championship. Why would he want to leave? Nate Oates, a guy that turned around a program, for all intents and purposes, you'd like to think is at an institution that can pay him solidly enough to want to stay. Does he want to leave that comfort zone, per se, and go to a place like Kentucky to where he can find himself on the fritz and not too long after if he doesn't perform well? There's another side of the town, and maybe that's why Cal left in first place, was because there's another side of the town there in Kentucky called Louisville basketball, who just got a coach that has been successful his entire time he's been in the profession. They're not going to be a dumpster fire anymore. Is Kentucky as good of a job as everyone makes it out to be? Because the expectations are absurd. Now, do you have resources? Maybe. Yes, obviously. Do you have anything that can get in your way that you would like to do if you're the head coach there? Probably not. Is that enticing? Probably for the vast majority of college coaches. Let's face it, in this certain community, every single program that we have around here has challenges. Indiana, maybe you could say, is the closest exception, but still, Indiana has not been what everybody makes Indiana out to be all that often. How close is Kentucky basketball being to Indiana versus UConn? I would argue, results would point towards the former. I'm not saying that they're Indiana starting next year, but they're a lot closer than that fan base wants to make it out to be. And they had a pretty damn good coach in Cal. And I'm not sitting here suggesting you can't go find somebody better. I put down on X last night that there's one person I'd be going after. One single person, and I'd find a way. I'd just sit there out in their front yard. I'd pitch a tent right in front of Brad Stevens' front door, and I'd just wait for him to walk out the house every day. And I'd say, Brad Stevens, do you really want to sit in an NBA tower in the press boxes? Is that fun to you? You want to just sit there and be a general manager, or do you want to come to the biggest, baddest college basketball program there is and do what you almost did at Butler? You got to needle that a little bit, right? He was right there at Butler. He had the Blue Bloods right down to the wire at a place like Butler. If that isn't the best person for the job, I don't know. I don't know what is. I really don't know what is. I know people are going to say he's not been in the game that long, blah, blah, blah. He's been successful everywhere he's gone. He took literally a program and had no business getting to the Final Four. And he did it more than once. I get he had Gordon Hayward. I understand that. But kudos to him for being able to see that he had Gordon Hayward. I understand there's Nate Oates. I understand there's Dan Hurley. But Brad Stevens is the guy for me.
Brad Stevens is the president of basketball operations at arguably the biggest basketball brand in the world. Why would he leave? You literally gain nothing from this decision.
He stepped away from coaching. That was a personal decision.
He was the youngest head coach.
Stepped away from coaching in the NBA.
He was the youngest head coach in NBA history. He then advanced in the rankings to get up to being the president of basketball ops for the Boston Celtics. And you're saying, let's go to Kentucky and have that fan base attack you for losing one game to UNC Greensboro, or wherever the hell they lose to, Wilmington?
He won't be losing to them. He won't be losing to them.
Like, you talk about pressure. Why would you do that? You have the Celtics they just clinched the 1 seed in the NBA. They're like 70-10. He's doing a perfect job with the Boston Celtics, which again is, I hate to say it, a significantly bigger brand than the Kentucky Wildcats. For a fan base that, for at least what I've seen, loves them. And now you're going to go to Kentucky, and if he has one mediocre year, the fan base is going to call for his head.
Nah, he has plenty of time after one mediocre year at Kentucky.
You don't think Kentucky sports radio is going to come at him for one bad year?
Yeah, maybe they'll be upset. They got to talk. They're on sports radio. But I'm saying in general terms, it's not like he's going to be under the microscope right when he gets there. And secondly, the better question is what you said. Why would he leave? And I think that, quite frankly, in time, sometimes if you get to the top of the peak of whatever you're doing, you want to challenge. You want to challenge. Now, you could argue that he's not won the NBA championship. Okay, that's great. But, again, at some point, I think he's a coach at heart. And maybe I would say he's a college basketball coach at heart. And the reason he left to go to the NBA is because he wanted to take something that he thought was probably going to only be there for a short amount of time. And he was super young. And at some point, the blue blood jobs only open up every so often. Kansas has had how many coaches over the last, call it 100 years? Whatever it's been. 5?
Yeah, not many.
5? Kentucky's jobs opened up how many times? Not often. North Carolina, same thing. At some point, there's only a few jobs Brad Stevens would come back for. There's 3 jobs. 3 jobs I can see him coming back for. Carolina, probably the lowest one. Kentucky's the number one, I think, because he's from around this area. And maybe you could get me in Kansas, but I would even say Kentucky might be the only one.
Brad Stevens is rumored to go to Indiana about every other year.
Yeah.
And that's because they want him.
And the rumor isn't real. It's just the fans going like, this is the time we get Brad Stevens. And it's just like, it's not going to happen. Kentucky basketball does feel like those football like Ohio State football, like every time that they're like, I get on X.com and the guys that you're seeing are Brad Stevens, Jay Wright. And it's like, yeah, those guys walked away from bigger, like not bigger programs. Like Jay Wright, obviously, Villanova's not bigger than Kentucky, but it was in a better spot. He was in a much better spot. The more realistic options are like, would Mark Few leave Gonzaga? Would Kelvin Sampson leave Houston? Like, I feel like those are more realistic options. I don't think Brad Stevens wants to coach anymore, or else he'd be coaching. Also, a reminder: Brad Stevens, the year that he stopped coaching the Celtics, the next year they made it to the finals, something Brad Stevens never did. But it's beside the point.
A couple things. Brad Stevens, people in the chat are saying Brad Stevens, he would only come back to Kentucky. He would only come back to Kentucky, and he's turned Kentucky down twice. No. You know, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's the candy striped pants. I don't know if it's for the idea of the allure of Indiana basketball, but Indiana basketball is not what the vast majority of people think that it is. And the problem is with that job is that people have those expectations because they actually think that they're the elites of the elite, and they're just not. So why would you want to go to that job? Why would you want to go to Indiana when the expectations and what they would expect out of you is extremely high, and the reality is it's not been that way since Bob Knight? Kentucky, for all intents and purposes, I'm not trying to be overly absurd here. I have no dog in this fight. Kentucky is a significantly different program than Indiana. Significantly. We're talking about a program that I believe, if you can correct me if I'm wrong, has the most wins of all time in the sport. Outside of the era that was Bob Knight at Indiana, what in the absolute hell has Indiana done? Just asking. Not trying to be rude. Just saying.
I think it's the personal connections. That's why Brad Stevens is rumored to always go to Indiana. He grew up an hour away from Bloomington. He went to college in DePaul, which is in Indiana. He was the coach at Butler, and he's said that his dream job is the Indiana job. So that's why he's always rumored there, is because the personal connections there. He grew up an Indiana fan. Like, all these things is why it's always rumored to Indiana. And there is a certain, like, him winning at Kentucky is more likely, right? Brad Stevens takes the Kentucky job. It's been a powerhouse pretty much for every coach that's ever been there, except for Billy Gillespie. If he goes to Indiana and brings them back to prominence, he is a mythical creature in that state once again.
Correct.
That's why. It's where he grew up. That's why he's always rumored to Indiana. And I'm with you, right? Indiana hasn't been anything other than when Bob Knight was there.
Then, question for you. Why doesn't anyone that has really close ties to Indiana ever go back? Why did Steve Alford not go back? Why did Brad Stevens not go back? Because ultimately, you look at the job, it's very similar to what this town is. If you have a legacy in this town in Hamilton, do you want to go back and coach the Big Blue baseball team right now? And I'm not trying to crush them, but it's not the same anymore. It's not the same. The expectations might be the same, but it's not the same. That's the reality. The players aren't the same. The situation isn't the same anymore. So we'll see what ultimately ends up happening at Kentucky. But I think the bigger question that surrounds this is whether or not someone else is going to leave a prominent position to go there. What happens if they swing and miss on Mark Few? What happened? Mark Few's not leaving, by the way. There's just zero chance of that.
What about a Danny Hurley?
I'm saying they're gonna. Let's just say let's
throw the bag at Dan Hurley.
You're saying there's less of a chance that Mark Few leaves Gonzaga.
Yes.
Than Brad Stevens leaves as president of basketball operations for the Boston Celtics.
And I just want to know that if I'm right, then I want to know what I can't wait to see all the faces.
I can't wait to see him either.
You think Mark Few's going to leave Gonzaga, a place that he's had opportunities to leave plenty of times before?
No, I don't think.
There's zero chance he's leaving.
Correct.
Why would he leave?
I wouldn't want the Kentucky job, and unless you're a coach with literally no name. Like if Wes Miller gets it, yeah, obviously you take the Kentucky job. But if you have had some success for wherever you're at, you're entering a world of hurt when you go to Kentucky. You win a national championship, 2 years later, you have a bad year, you're out.
I do think it's more likely. I threw Mark Few's name out there just to throw a name out there. I think it is more likely that Brad Stevens goes to Kentucky than Mark Few. I've said for a while, I've been telling Trace and Sean this since I started working for them. There's coaches that, because I've always said this about Xavier, right? If you're the Xavier coach, you make the Sweet 16 every 4 years, 5 years, whatever it is, you're beloved. That's the expectation. Yeah, we want to get to a Final Four eventually, but you just keep churning it out. You know, you can be here for decades. Mark Few can do no wrong at Gonzaga now. You go to Kentucky, you could be out of that job in 5 years if it's not going well. And I do think that about, like, I think the grass isn't always greener on the other side. I think some coaches, like Nate Oates at Alabama, he's just got to, they make a Sweet 16 every 4 years. He can have that job as long as he wants it. As long as he wants it. He goes to Kentucky, doesn't make the tournament for 2 years. See you later, Nate Oates.
Yeah, it's bye-bye.
So the grass isn't always greener.
All right, well, we will discuss maybe who we think the Kentucky Wildcats will ultimately wind up with right after this and whether they should take it on 1410 Wing AM. All right, welcome back in. It's 1410 Wing AM, Dayton's home for the best sports talk in the Miami Valley. The Miami Valley that gets to see a 100% total eclipse today. So shout out to the Miami Valley for being elite on what is April 8th, 2018. 2024.
Want some solar eclipse facts?
Sure. That's what we said we were going to do today.
You mentioned it, but more. I have the numbers for you. More people
Please.
currently live in the path of totality compared to the last eclipse. So, and the last eclipse was 2017. Only 12 million got to see it. 12 million got to see totality. 31.6 million get to see it this time. I have one more. Hold on. A part of the sun, which is typically hidden, will reveal itself. It allows for a glimpse of the sun's corona, which is the outermost atmosphere of the star that is normally not visible to humans because of the sun's brightness. Science. You ever watch Bill Nye, the science guy?
Absolutely.
Bill had a TikTok I saw yesterday.
Yeah.
He was going through all the details. I brought my glasses today. He was basically saying, if you stare at it for too long, you'll go blind and you'll never see again. So I brought in my science glasses today, and again, I can't see a thing. These are just complete black, and I don't understand the point of it. I guess because if you look directly at the sun, maybe it'll somehow burst through the complete darkness.
Start
here.
singing for me.
But I can't.
No, keep those on and start singing for me.
Why would I do that?
I feel like that would be a good look for you.
I don't understand the reference, but I'm not going to do that.
Ray Charles?
Is that it?
I
Is
don't know,
that
Stevie
what we were
Wonder?
doing? Stevie
I
Wonder?
thought you were going to let it rip.
No, I'm good on that. But yeah, so I'm going to try to do it where I look at these, and if I don't like what I'm seeing in the sun, I'm just going to take them off. I'm going to look at them with my bare eyes.
All right.
And if I go blind, I go blind.
Good
But
luck.
we at Chatterbox Sports do not advise that you do that. Nobody look at the sun directly without at least some sort of scientific goggles.
Just so you do know, since we are in the path of 100% totality, you are able to take off those glasses when it's in totality, which is just a few minutes.
Are we sure about that?
100% sure.
Yep.
100% sure. Yeah. Scientists have said that time and time again. So
Who's your favorite scientist?
I don't know, man, to be honest. I guess there is one guy, and I'd be butchering his name right now if I said it, but I don't really get into the science a whole lot, which is more or less not an indication of anything against the science community, just more of an indictment towards me for not being smart enough to keep up. So then you can just kind of give up, you know? When you're not
Yeah.
smart enough to keep up, you just give up. Kind of like Casey. What'd you go to school for?
I went to school to be an electrical engineer.
How long that last?
2 weeks.
Why'd that last that long?
I couldn't understand what they were saying.
That's right. Point proven.
Science.
Science. All right, let's do we're gonna wrap basically a bow around this Cal situation in Kentucky. He 100% got forced out. He then Kentucky, for all intents and purposes, don't have to take care of the buyout. They have plenty of money to spend. We had like a $30 million buyout. You just imagine being a part of that athletic department. And let's face it, if Musselman doesn't leave, they're probably stuck in a rock and a hard place here. There's really not a great situation. They got to get out of jail free card by the fact that he's now leaving to go to Arkansas when they have $30 million laying around that they thought about probably using.
Yeah.
So money is not an option. Not an option. Money is not any kind of reason as to why they won't be able to go out and get somebody. Now we get to find out the most important question that I think that we are going to talk about around this, which is this still an elite job?
The Kentucky job.
Correct. Because money is going to be, without question, the thing that they're going to try to lure some of these guys in with. Dan Hurley, his name gets mentioned. We'll talk about all these guys in just a second. Dan Hurley, Nate Oates, obviously I brought up Brad Stevens. Is there any other names?
Scott Drew.
Drew. Any other names outside of those, we'll call it 4,
Sean Miller.
that
Imagine how
there was a
upset
good
Kentucky fans would be if they got Sean Miller.
Sean Miller.
both
Sean,
fan
I
bases
can't
would
even
be
steal
sad.
this line. It's a one-liner that really made me laugh. And I asked Sean if he wanted to be on the show just because of that. He said, "Why in the hell would Kentucky want Sean Miller? He's never been to a Final Four." And that's a good point. It's a very valid point.
Mean.
It's a very fair point. He was at Arizona. It's not like he wasn't at somewhere, but he's a good coach. Okay, we get it. But you're Kentucky.
I think it comes down to similarly to the Brady versus Belichick thing. It's Kentucky versus Cal now. Who's responsible for Kentucky's success? Is it the brand of Kentucky, or is it because of this larger-than-life figure, Calipari, who's recruited NBA talent year after year after year, and he's done a phenomenal job? Nobody in this room, at least to my knowledge, is going to say Calipari's overrated or he isn't a good coach. He's damn good at what he does. Damn good.
Just kind of run its course, right? Like
I
it just,
think it's
just kinda ran
grown
course.
tired.
Right.
Now I will say, if this next coach struggles, I think there's a portion of that fan base that's going to be quaking in their boots a little bit, begging for him back. I do think that's a possibility because I have no doubt in my mind that Calipari is going to make Arkansas one of the bigger programs in the SEC, if not the biggest. I would put a large amount of money that Arkansas is going to be the number 1 seed in the tournament in the next 3 years. A large sum of money. And that's going to be because of Calipari. Now, I don't know who they're going to hire because I don't know if they want a larger-than-life guy because I think that's kind of where the issue was. I think the fan base Cal thought he was bigger than Kentucky. I think they thought it was a little ego going on there.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're going to want a larger-than-life college basketball
I don't know
coach
if there is one of those out there.
Like Pitino. Pitino would be the one.
Pitino, can we
That would be awesome.
Can we all collectively do one thing together? And
It would
the
be
chat?
awesome.
Let's all do this. And if you're listening to the radio, let's all do this together, okay? Let's just eliminate a few names. Rick Pitino is not going to be the next coach at the University of Kentucky. It's not happening. Bob Huggins is not going to be the next coach at the University of Kentucky.
Well, nobody thought
It's
that.
just – are you sure?
Well, yeah, he's not going to be able to drive to the arena.
Well, I'm just suggesting to you that there are people
It's
out there.
difficult to coach basketball.
There are people out there, Elliot, that are suggesting these things. What I'm trying to tell you is that those two names, it's not happening. So we can kind of move past that.
I think more people would want Pitino than you would think. I think Pitino is more plausible than Brad Stevens.
That's absurd to me.
I don't think so.
I mean, that's so absurd.
The thing about Pitino is that it's not a long-term option. Like, Pitino's got, 5 years?
Yeah.
He's got, 5 years in him?
Yeah, that's not what Kentucky's looking for.
That's not what you're looking for.
No.
Pitino would be good. Like, but you'd win. You'd win a lot, but, it's not a long-term plan. It's not a long-term plan.
But you also don't have a long leash. So it goes both ways. I think you want a guy that, sure, wins for a long period of time. You get him for 20 years, no doubt. But if a guy comes in for 2 years and doesn't make the tournament here, we're going to have some serious problems at Kentucky. And I don't think that would ever happen with Pitino. I think you get 5 years of dominance under Rick Pitino. That's what I believe would happen. St. John's should have probably been a tournament team in his first year there this year.
Probably.
I just cannot believe that people think or are suggesting that Rick Pitino is the answer to their situation. Can someone suggest to me what exactly it is about that makes you think that that's probably a realistic thing? The guy got ran out of town for some scandal not too far from a rival that you just seen. And then on top of that, this year he's complaining publicly about how the state of college basketball is in shambles, and he doesn't think that he loves it anymore. You want to bring that back?
An emotional guy who overreacts after every win or every loss. I think the Kentucky fans would love him. Absolutely adore him.
I tell you what, man. Sometimes you sit up here and you try to think about how in the world the way the world thinks, and it just doesn't compute with me. I can't fathom Rick Pitino being the next coach at University of Kentucky. And you're suggesting to me over there with a straight face that you think that that's more plausible than a guy that took Butler to 2 Final Fours.
Then the president of basketball operations for the biggest brand in basketball,
where he's just tired of it.
There is quite literally not a bigger job in the sport of basketball in the entire world than what Brad Stevens has. There's none. There's no job bigger than what he has. But sure, let's go to Kentucky and listen to KSN and Matt Jones, and we'll see him tear me to shreds after losing 1 game to Alabama during the regular season.
Is there somewhere where we can find the odds? Because there's got to be.
Does Bovada have it? No free ads, but does Bovada have it?
I'm sure that there are odds out there, and I do believe I see
I got them.
Please.
And to answer your question, yeah.
You want to know who's the lowest odds?
Lowest odds being favorite.
Yep, the biggest.
Dan Hurley.
Biggest favorite. Danny Hurley has the best odds, 2-1. Jay Wright after that.
Yep.
I can see Jay Wright.
Billy Donovan, that's a name that we haven't brought up.
Why would he want to leave arguably one of the most historic franchises of all time in the NBA? Coaching the Chicago Bulls and go to college basketball.
I think we are misremembering what the Chicago Bulls are. The Chicago Bulls had about an 8-year run. Other than that, they've been pretty much a garbage can in the NBA for their entirety of their
And
existence.
also, coaching is vastly different than being GM or president of basketball ops. Vastly different jobs.
And that's my point.
The Chicago Bulls are the Indiana Hoosiers of the NBA.
Yeah, they're bad.
They had one run in the sun, and we're still holding on to that. Brad Underwood, after that, TJ Holzelberger from Iowa State.
Oh,
Then there's Scott Drew, Bruce Pearl, Nate Oates, Shaka Smart, Rick Pitino with 60-1 odds.
Nice. Yeah, they're just stealing money.
Brad Stevens not listed.
oh.
Brad
I'm shocked.
Stevens is
I'm shocked. The
is-
president of
is-
basketball ops for the Boston Celtics isn't listed to go muck it up with the Kentucky fans. I'm shocked.
The guy who said he doesn't want to coach anymore.
Quick question for you. While the chat thinks it's funny, what's the field?
The field is 9-1.
9-1, which is better than how many odds?
Better than
What, three coaches?
Yep, Donovan, Wright, and Hurley.
So outside of Donovan Wright, Hurley, all the list of names that everybody wants to see here and acts like a big deal, the field, someone outside of that, has the best odds.
Yeah.
Keep laughing, though.
There's 7 billion people in the world. Outside of 3,
Who
those are
possibly
pretty
could the
good
field
odds.
have left where they have the third best odds? Who possibly could be left?
I mean, you're talking about guys like Sean Miller, Brad Stevens, Kelvin
Nobody's talking about
Sampson,
Brad
Kelvin Sampson, Mark Few.
Okay. I'm keeping receipts.
Please.
I'm
please
keeping
clip
receipts.
It. Please clip it that the president of basketball ops for the Boston Celtics, who didn't want to coach anymore, does not want to coach at Kentucky. Please keep that receipt. I want my receipt kept on that. How many years do I get with that take?
It's almost like Trace wouldn't say these things if he didn't know something.
What do you know? You
You
got
don't need to
insiders?
know.
You're on the
You
you're
got
on the
inside?
inside of
Almost
Kentucky
like
You're
Trace.
on the
It's
inside track
almost
of
like
Kentucky
Trace wouldn't say
basketball?
some things if Trace didn't at least have some type of intel.
He's on the inside
Trace.
track.
Just saying. Just saying.
Who do you know from Kentucky?
I've heard.
You've heard?
I mean, I can't divulge.
Okay.
I mean,
Let's just move on.
nonsense.
You think
You know
it's
what Kentucky
nonsense?
should actually do? Kirby threw it in there.
What
Just
kind of
hire
odds? Okay,
Doc Rivers.
Mr. Preposterous Man. Let's play a little game. 1-800-GAMBLE responsibly. Let's see how big. Let's see how confident you are. What kind of odds you want to give me of Brad Stevens? If you think it's so preposterous.
Well, you're saying it's going to happen, so 1-1.
Okay.
You say it's for
there
sure
it
gonna
is. There it is. You don't want to give me. You don't want to give me.
No, because what do I have to win from that bet? That bet goes on for 80 years until you're dead.
No. This time around, if he gets hired this time around, if he gets hired in 10 days, what odds do you want to give me?
I mean, I'd give you 150 to 1.
All right, I'll put $200 on it.
All right.
Can you pay that or not? You work here for a year for free.
Let's.
I'll put it in a contract. We'll write it down. I'll sign it. I'll give you $200 if he's not the coach. If he is the coach, big boy, you have to work here for a year and a half for free.
So that would be 30,000.
Yeah, we'll call it what it is.
30,000.
Whatever time it takes. We won't put your salary out here in the middle of the world, but whatever time that
Well,
takes,
that's what it is.
you work for free. Do you want to do that or not?
No, I don't want to do that.
Okay, all right.
Because I don't have a whole
How
lot
are
to
you?
lose.
On
Okay.
It's really bad.
You're on the inside track at Kentucky basketball. I mean, I'm still hung up on that. You've got inside.
Well, all I'm doing is everybody's sitting here laughing at Trace, acting like he's a big idiot, and how big of an idiot Trace is. Oh my God, he's got the best basketball job in the entire world, Trace. He'll never leave. I'm trying to give a guy over here that can't win a bet to save his life $200 free supposedly, and all of a sudden now he changes his mind.
Well, yeah, because I have quite literally
You're
nothing
taking
to
away
lose. Or nothing to gain. I have nothing to
You
gain
have
from this bet.
$200 to gain, Elliot.
Yeah, but this is like one of your nonsense bets when you put 100,000 on a bet to win like $50. It's just like it's not worth my time. You put more than 200 on it, and I'll take it. You put 1,000 on it, and we'll take it.
You can't pay $1,000.
Yeah, but it's not going to happen, so it wouldn't even matter.
Okay.
I'd take
so,
your 1,000.
So this is my favorite thing about Elliot. Before we get on to some more talk, Purdue or Purdue, just after this on 1410. But before we go, I got a quick question for you.
Sure.
You do this all the time in gambling. You always suggest that whatever is in front of you is not ever good enough. It's like I'm trying to give you $200, and you're acting like that's not good enough. You need 1,000 now.
I have another list.
mean-
I have another list of coaching odds.
Yes.
Brad Stevens not on this list either, and the odds are much different. Nate Oates is the highest odds.
It's
Scott
free
Drew
money,
after
Elliot.
After that, they even threw Mark Pope out there, keeping the faith.
Man.
The field's 15-1 on this one.
It quite literally, it wouldn't be worth my time.
Rick
But
Pitino has better odds in the field.
I'll tell you what. I hope you're right. Now I'm cheering for it. Now I'm cheering for you because it's going to be a great feeling for me not taking that bet.
Gotcha. So you're going to reverse psychology this one.
Yeah.
I like that. All right, when we come back, we're going to talk about whether or not UConn, Dan Hurley, is he head of Kentucky? We don't know, but I do know one thing he's doing. He's playing for another national championship tonight. Can Zach Edey and the boys stop him? I don't know. We'll have a discussion about it next on 1410 Wing AM. All right, we got some super chats. Some super chats. Let me get to them here. Harrow. He's told us 1,000 times how to say this. Is it Harrow? Harrow.
It's actually just fun to do it every time. That
Yeah,
we bring
I
it
know.
up.
Listen, people think it's a
become
bit.
a show bit.
That's not really a bit.
It's
though.
Harrow.
Like,
If I'm
Harrow.
I've given up on it.
Harrow. Maybe if
Joe
you just
Burrow.
mumble it really fast, then you can get by. Harrow, thank you for being a loyal 6 months.
6 months.
Cutter. Yash, she can play with Paige in the WNBA. She's one of the best players to not win a championship. One of the best players to play. She will be she will bring a market. Excuse me. She will bring a market to the WNBA too. He is talking about obviously Caitlin Clark, and he's not wrong. The only thing, Yash, is like the question is whether or not that translates over. That's what we talked about time and time again. She's an unbelievable player. I just don't know if she's going to be good enough to keep. Like, the worst thing that could happen for the WNBA is if she does get clamped up. Like, she goes to the WNBA and you realize the players are just better. Like, she's not playing against women's college basketball players anymore. And there's only 8 teams in the. How many teams are in the WNBA? 12? 8, 9?
My number was 12.
12?
Let me look.
So if there's only 12 teams, think about how selective of a group that really is. You think it's hard to make the NBA, and it is incredibly hard to make the NBA. Think about how hard it is to make the WNBA. I don't know. Casey, you can let me know how many that is.
1, 2, 3, 4,
Justin with the super
12.
chat
12.
said, "Long live Roman Reigns! Hell of a chance. Hell of a run, champ. Excuse me.
WrestleMania was last night. You guys watch? No?
No, I'm not a wrestling guy.
I couldn't watch that if you paid me. If Trace.
So you did pay. You did watch it.
If you Peacock, it's for free. Yeah.
Well, are you trying to? Wait a minute. Did you see what Reed just did right there?
Yeah.
I love that. It's okay to say you like it and you want to watch it. I mean, I'm not. If you paid $50 for it, that's fine too. But you don't have to justify that since you had Peacock. You're like, I guess I'll watch it.
What? What are we doing here?
I feel like he just tried to.
I thought he did it. I thought he did it because he didn't actually watch it, and then he just said it was free on Peacock.
Gotcha. I thought you were trying to suggest that the only reason you watched it is because you didn't have to pay for it.
Oh, I did not watch it.
Okay.
Yeah,
I watched
the
the highlights. I saw the end of the match when
My apologies,
The Undertaker and John Cena and The Rock came out. That was cool.
Alex Unzer Bauman starting now. I'll super chat $5 for every time Ellie runs into an outfielder, calling him off a fly ball. We're going to talk into the Reds. We have to. By the way, we have one last segment for the radio. We have to talk about Reds and national championship game in there. Casey, ad reads real quick.
Yeah, I can do some ad reads.
We'll do some ad reads.
Yeah, the Bengals, Reds, all the sports teams here in
Sports
Cincinnati.
report. I think the sports
I think
report.
it's the sports report.
The sports report is brought to you by Encore Technologies. Encore Technologies provides IT solutions for a data-centered world with a suite of services from mobile computing to desktop to data center, supporting both centralized and work-from-home computing modules to improve efficiency and
Productivity.
That's right, productivity. The path to innovation begins here. Visit encore.tech. And I don't have my bottle. Where's my bottle at?
Oh no.
I can't see anything.
Oh no.
Oh, no.
Where's my Pawnee water at?
Oh no.
Oh no. What are you gonna do?
What am I gonna do?
Where
I
is
don't
it?
know where my Pawnee water is.
I can't see it.
Oh my gosh, there it is. Out of nowhere. Exactly where you needed it though, because it always comes when you need it. Pawnee water. Made right here in Hamilton, Ohio, uses natural limestone filtration, unlike the artificial processing that other brands use. The result is a healthy alkaline water, and some say the best tasting water in the world. Visit Pawnee Water at PAHHNIwater.com to see where you can buy this great tasting water.
That's right. Lindsay, what's your favorite part about Pawnee water? For me, I'll give you mine before you answer yours. Mine's the smoothness.
Yeah.
Because when you take a big gulp and you wash it down the gullet, it's nice and smooth. It's not like those other waters where it's like a kind of like it takes a little bit of work, right? Maybe there's some rocks in that water. Not in this water. This water is smooth and it's beautiful. Reed, what's your favorite part about Pawnee water?
I like the natural limestone filtration personally.
Yeah.
Like other places, they'll filtrate unnaturally, artificially, they should say.
Yeah.
But maybe with like lemon pebbles or something like that. But they do it naturally
Lemon
with
pebbles.
limestone. That's what I like about Pawnee
Lindsay,
water.
what's your favorite?
You know, you both took my answer.
Yeah.
And I just love both of those combined makes
Yeah, I
perfect
figured that's
water.
what we did. I figured that's what we did when I went on that rant. Casey, what's your favorite part about it?
I love that it's made right here in Hamilton,
Wow.
right next door. I
Okay.
like that.
All right.
It's easy to get.
That's it. We have one more, I think.
Trace?
Do we have one more? Do we have one more?
My favorite thing?
Oh,
yeah.
Trace's.
What's your favorite thing?
My
Trace?
favorite thing is that it's healthy for you and it can replenish you when you're exerting yourself. Let's be honest. There's no better thing to quench your thirst than a good water.
Good answer. Good answer. And we do have one
answer, good
last.
answer.
We have
Good answer.
we have
Good
one-
answer.
Good answer.
Yeah,
Good answer.
Da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da. Go ahead, Casey.
We have
Come on, Casey.
Family
Casey,
Feud.
you gotta
Come
keep
on,
that
I love
Casey.
Family
This is
Feud.
for the ads.
Yeah, this is serious, Casey.
We got our ticketing sponsor, the Game Time app. Download it. Redeem code OTB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. That's code OTB for $20 off your first purchase. 2 clicks, you get your tickets, all pricing up front. You get to see exactly where you're sitting at. I hope that you guys are using it for these Reds tickets. Get some good seats. I don't know when
I think
play next.
I think Evan did. And I'll give you a little backstory here. We've got some time to fill, so I'm going to tell a story. I was working with Reed at our favorite ballpark, Presco, on Friday night.
It is a beautiful ballpark.
And I said, you know what? I'm going to make an executive decision, and I'm going to drive to Great American Ballpark. And the game had already started. And I said, if I can drive there fast enough, I'll get there by the I think my estimation was the top of the 6th. I got there. It was impossible to park. All my parking was taken, so I ended up paying like $25 for parking. But so I parked. I got in the ballpark in the bottom of the 6th inning on Friday night. The bottom of the 6th inning. And I walked in. Evan sent me his tickets, which he used using the Game Time app. Shout out to Game Time. Use code OTB. He sent me the ticket. He's like, yeah, come on in. We've got great seats. I'm like, okay. So I walk in, and I get to the gate, and the guy looks at me. He's like, what are you doing? There's no re-entry here. I'm like, oh, I haven't been in yet. He's like, what? Why are you here? I'm like, well, I was just coming late. He's like, why would you do that? Did you pay for that just now? I'm like, no, I had a ticket and I just come from work. He's like, okay. And then like after an hour of questioning, he let me in the ballpark and I walked to my seats. And unfortunately, some are saying on the internet, not me per se,
Right.
but some are saying that I was the reason they lost that game. I wouldn't say that, but they certainly played really bad immediately after I got there. So that's just a fun little story for you.
The jinx continues. By the way, Trace,
I'm 0-2 on the year.
I am not going to stop searching the internet until I find one article that lists Brad Stevens as a target.
Yeah, you're not.
I
want to
know. I'm 13 articles in, and his name hasn't been brought up once.
Okay.
I want to know what you know. Because
I
you
wanna know it
alluded
too.
to some Big J stuff. Big J, he's like, I got sources on the inside track. And literally, I have not read a single article from the Lexington Herald to Sporting News, nothing. 35 coaches have been brought up Brad Stevens not one time.
Right.
It is interesting, though, how Trace is pushing this narrative. He's the only person.
Now, I'm doing this without Googling Brad Stevens Kentucky basketball.
He's the only. Trace is literally the only person on the internet that's talking about this. The only one. Like, there's a million people, a billion people on Twitter.
Gotcha.
There's one person.
So who
talking
had?
about Brad
I got a
Stevens.
question in the room. Who had Calipari going to Arkansas? Anybody?
No.
Weird. It's almost
How's
like
that weird?
It's almost like the media sometimes. They just don't know until you find out.
I guess you're right. The president of basketball operations for the biggest basketball brand in the world is going to leave, and he's going to come muck it up with Matt Jones and Kentucky Sports Radio.
I think if it does happen, Elliott has lost a lot of respect for Stevens. Quite a bit. This is what it sounds like.
Well, yeah, because that's a nonsensical move. That's a backwards trajectory move. You have nothing to gain from that.
If
You're at the
in
top of
with-
the basketball world.
If you're in with Kentucky, did you know that Cal was going to Arkansas then?
Yeah, did you know that? Did you know that?
I'm well aware that there was a lot of big donors that were wanting to get rid of him, yes, but ultimately it came down to Mitch Barnhart. He had to make the decision. So clearly they did enough to push him out. He was not leaving unless he decided to leave because of people act like money just grows on trees no matter what. Listen, $30 million, $30 million. I don't think that you're getting rid of a guy that has arguably one of the best rosters in college basketball every year just to say, hey, we're gonna throw $30 million at this thing and then turn around and have to pay somebody a lucrative amount of money to leave. Just hypothetically speaking, though, because we need to move on to other things. We're getting ready to get back on the radio here in just a moment. Hypothetically speaking, if you gave somebody a $20 million signing bonus, you think that might make them reconsider? You just saved $30 million.
Sure. If they offered him essentially what Cal's buyout was, then yeah.
I think if you would get a guy like Dan Hurley,
yeah,
you'd have to give him the back. I mean, because he's got a
correct
wagon up there, and
it's got to be that.
That's on the precipice of being a blue blood. Like you'd have to be giving him.
Well, let's just say
12
this.
and a half a year.
I'm not going to. You can't guarantee it's going to be Brad Stevens. But what I'm saying is, I think that's more of a realistic possibility than people are giving it. That's all I'm saying. But what I will ultimately say that I know for a fact is this will prove if Kentucky is still an elite level job, because money, in my opinion, will be null void. It will be over and above and beyond what they'll be able to get anywhere else. And then the only thing left that it will come down to is whether they want the job at Kentucky or not. If you're Dan Hurley, I wouldn't leave. But, again, money talks. Maybe you think you can do the same thing at Kentucky, and rightfully so. If you can do the same thing at Kentucky that you did at UConn, you're a god. Yes, we all get it. But I don't know if that's what Dan Hurley wants. I think sometimes like Mark Few's not leaving because of personal reasons. I think once you make a certain amount of money in life, you can go one of two ways. Some people decide at that very moment in their life that they're seeking happiness and they want to be stable and they want to go somewhere where they're loved and they're appreciated and they're cool with being there. And that's not a bad way to live. I think that there are some others, though, that will continue to chase money no matter what. So you don't really know what type of personality some folks are until the money's on the table. We've seen it with Live Golf, obviously, already with the PGA Tour. We've seen what Mark Few's done. Mark Few's decided to stay at Gonzaga for, what I would say probably reasons that would be outside of money a consistent amount of the time. And now you have a situation where some people are going to have to make that decision right now, and it'll be interesting to see. Because what happens if Mick Cronin ends up being the guy at Kentucky? Obviously, Kentucky fans are going to be pissed, but if you don't get Dan Hurley and you don't get – I guess you could ultimately wind up with someone like Drew or somebody. Like, Drew's going to leave Baylor to go to Kentucky, right?
Yeah, I think
like
so.
That's the basement. So that's not bad.
Who would Kentucky fans, which Cincinnati head coach would they get more upset about? Mick Cronin or Sean Miller? Who would, if
Can we
you
put
were a
Wes Miller in
Kentucky
there
fan,
too for fun?
If you were a Kentucky fan, what Wes Miller's name that hasn't been thrown around.
No, you think that's because you don't want anything yet? Go ahead, continue. Sorry, I interrupted. Continue.
Who would they be
Such
more
a
upset about
ricochet
getting,
shot.
Mick Cronin or Sean Miller?
Mick Cronin. They would lose their minds at Mick Cronin. That's a style of basketball that hasn't been seen since 1942, and nobody wants to deal with that. Mick Cronin's terrible with the media.
Would Dan Hurley
terrible with the fans.
come to Kentucky, come to Lexington, so that he'd only be 90 minutes away from his beloved Cincinnati Bengals? Some are saying. We
shall find out.
Let's give 5 seconds of silence and come back to the radio.
Okay. All right, welcome back in to 1410 Wing AM. At this very moment, based off my math, it's about totality. You got a fun fact?
Yeah, I do. I'm glad you asked. 2 planets and maybe a comet can also be spotted when the totality starts. So you're gonna be able to see the stars. You're gonna be able to see the whole night sky for about that 4-minute stretch. That'll be pretty cool. I would love to see a comet. I've never seen a comet before. I got a couple more.
You've never seen a shooting star?
No, I've never seen one. I've got a couple more facts since this is our last segment on radio today.
Yes.
The eclipse can cause a 360-degree sunset. I don't know what that means, but it sounds incredible. 360 degrees sunset. The temperature is going to drop significantly once the sun is blacked out for obvious reasons. Not going to get that heat. That's going to be really cool. They say it can drop as much as 10 degrees during that 4-minute stretch. And also, finally, wildlife may act differently. So when the sky goes to nighttime, animals and your dogs, your cats, some birds, everybody's going to start freaking out because they're going to think it's the end of the world because this is not how their body operates. They know when the sun comes out. They know when the sun goes away. So that'll be fun.
Don't let your dogs outside.
Don't let your dogs outside. Is that? Oh, yeah.
Because, well, I mean, what if they wondering what's up? They look up at the sun.
Yeah. So
They
don't
go
do
blind.
that.
Don't want a blind dog.
You don't want a blind dog. So that's it. How about that? Oh, this says there will be
That's
long,
a real thing.
There will be a long wait for the next total eclipse in the United States. The next total eclipse in the U.S. won't happen until March 30th, 2033. 2033. So go outside and enjoy it today, but don't look at it without a special pair of science glasses. I was driving in to work this morning, and there was a little stand outside by the Kroger's. I live by River Road. If anybody
Sure.
knows River Road, there was a stand that just pulled up and started selling these for like $10 a piece. These are made of paper, and I can make one. So don't pay for them. Just go out and try to find one from a school because I'm pretty sure that's where everybody's getting them. Fun fact.
If
Solar
you can
eclipse
see
day.
through the glasses, I was told by a scientist that those are fake. You do
Yeah.
not want to use those.
If these you can't see it all through them, if you can see through them, you're going to go blind.
Yeah.
Per scientist,
You'd be a scary teacher,
why would I be a
Because
scary?
you're like the guy that threatens. You're
I
like
don't
the you're the
threaten. I don't
very
threaten.
much so.
I
Yes.
advise. I don't threaten. I advise.
Okay, is that what we're gonna call it?
I advise. I'm an advisor. Yeah.
Yeah, you're the guy that looks at the 10th grader when they first get to high school or their second year of high school and they don't turn their homework in.
Sure.
And they're like, if you do this in college, you'll fail immediately. Little do you know when you're in high school that really they don't even hardly ever give you homework in college and it's pretty chill.
Yeah, it is pretty chill.
If we're being honest, high school for me much more difficult than college.
100%.
Like,
I could cheat.
why'd they lie? They just
I could cheat all day in
teachers,
college.
Are teachers blatantly lying on purpose to try to just instill fear into students in high school, or did they just
I think some of
genuinely
them-
disagree.
think that college
I think some of them
had a lot of homework and it's very hard?
I think some of them genuinely think that.
Reed's actually going to stick up for college here. That's what it sounds like.
I took some classes in college. Like there was nothing in high school that I didn't comprehend. There was nothing that I was learning in high school that if I put my brain to it, I wouldn't get. There was stuff that I was reading stuff in college that literally I could read it 30 times in a row and I'd be like, what is this saying? Like I could read the words, but what are you trying to tell me? There was some class, I took an arts and crafts class in college. There was some of that, but there was some classes in college I took that were incredibly hard.
I didn't take any math or science classes.
I took one.
And
I literally wrote on my booklet, please, I took a chemistry class.
Yeah.
It wrote in the booklet, I just need a D. I think I had like a 15% in the class. And you had to get, for this, they had a grading curve where I only needed a 38 to pass, a 38% in the class to pass. And I literally wrote on the booklet, hey, this isn't my major. Please just give me a D- so I can go on. It was my senior year. And gave me a 39. I got a D-. They let me get my credit.
Rick wants to know if you failed arts and crafts.
I did not fail arts and crafts, but I did miss the first class.
Yeah.
And if you missed a class in Bluffton, the school was so small that they would tell your coach.
Oh, no.
And I got a call from my coach on the first day. He's like, you're missing arts and crafts. It was an 8 a.m. It was an 8 a.m. That was a tough
8 a.m.s
one.
are tough. 8 a.m.s are tough.
Speaking of college.
Speaking of 8 a.m.,
Speaking of college,
that's when they should have this national championship game tonight because it's tipping off at 9:30 p.m. Eastern on a Monday night. Who in the world allowed this to happen continually? And it happens every year, and we talk about it every year. It's nonsense. The women's game was on like a 3 p.m. or 2 p.m. on a Sunday afternoon. It was perfect. Perfect. But no, on Monday night, when everybody's got work the next day, we're going to cater to the non-fans on the West Coast. There's like 7 total sports fans on the West Coast of the United States. Jolly Jolly's one of them. He's in our chat. But what are we doing catering to the West Coast with these tips? What are we doing? Makes no sense to me.
Well, they've done it all tournament long. They like we talked about prior. They obviously just care less about what the local time is in regards to when they plan to start these games, because there was a 10 o'clock tip-off in the first round of the tournament in Pittsburgh.
Well, those,
It's
I
like-
mean, that makes no sense, but it's also fun because you got to watch basketball the whole day. So if you missed the 10
Right,
o'clock
but
game,
but
you
there's
missed the 10
games in
o'clock game.
Sacramento that are going off at 10 a.m.
Yeah, I agree.
It just at some point, I'm sure there's some type of logic that's used that the committee and or the folks that run this tournament, they like to consider themselves to be intelligent, and that's why they're going to do it, and they'll tell you how smart they are, but then they'll turn around and they'll put a team like Virginia in the tournament and not put Seton Hall, who did beat UConn, by the way, and not put Indiana State, who actually looked entertaining, by the way, but they'll put in some other teams that certainly doesn't seem like they deserve to be in. But you know what? The cool thing in life is that you're always told, hey, the experts are smarter than you. Well, that's true until they aren't. So I don't know. I'm assured of this. There's an expert that would tell you why it's starting at 10 o'clock tonight. The issue is that obviously if I didn't do a sports talk show, the chances of me staying up for this game tonight to watch it when I've already presumed to know what's going to happen would be little to none. There's going to be a plethora of people in the Miami Valley and Southwest Ohio today that are going to wake up tomorrow, check the box score, and be like, oh, that's cool. They're not going to watch the second half. They're not going to watch it. Now the question is should they?
I think they should, and that's a good segue. I mentioned this at the beginning of the show. 11 straight covers for UConn in their last 11 tournament games. It hasn't been close. They have dominated every single tournament game they've played in for the past 2 years. Purdue, I'm a Purdue hater. I'm not a Zach Edey believer. I will say this: Zach Edey is better than Klingon. And he is going to cause at least a little bit of panic on the UConn side, I predict, in the first half. If you're a gambler, and please gamble responsibly, I would bet on Purdue moneyline first half parlayed with UConn second half. Because I think that's what's going to happen in this game. I really do. UConn has proven that they don't start out the hottest. They really just it's like death by a thousand paper cuts, right? They slowly get to you. And by the time there's 4 minutes left in the game, you're out of it. And I think that's what's going to happen tonight. It's going to be a close game in the first half. People are going to start saying Zach Edey's for real. He's going to get drafted. He's going to go pro. He's going to be great in the NBA. And then by the second half, by the end of the second half, you're going to see that UConn's the best team in the country yet again. And they're going to be the first team since Florida to go back-to-back in a national championship.
I think that it's UConn all the way, but ultimately, you know what? Maybe Purdue is, and I think not to credit anybody in the room, but I think that it was said before that Purdue was probably the only team that could give UConn a run for their money, and the only way that's going to happen is if the guards shoot out of their mind and they make 50% from three tonight. You throw the ball into Edey. He finds a way to get double teamed. But here's the issue I have now that I think about it is that the Klingman kid from UConn, I don't know if they're going to need to double Edey. I don't know if they're going to need to double him. Every other team in the country has to double Edey. I don't know if UConn does need to do that. And the thing about UConn that's crazy to me is they might not have any theoretical superstars, but every single one of their players brings something to the table, and they're above average at what they bring to the table. They are such a well-rounded basketball team that I just can't fathom them losing. Now, I get that it's only a 40-minute game. There's more than craziness can happen. I understand. But it just seems like we're going to watch greatness tonight, and they're going to find a way to win by 7, 8 points. And there are people actively right now setting up tents down the sidewalk. I'm going to say it right now. I know I'm going off topic. I may have underestimated this totality thing. I think I was kind of making fun of it. I think I was joking around like, oh yeah, there's going to be a ton of people around here. I have now changed my mind as I've looked out the window for the first time in my entire career here at Chatterbox Sports. Yeah. And there are people what look to be camping out. Now, back to basketball.
Sure.
But speaking of camping out, the only chance that Purdue has if Zach Edey has an all-time night tonight, okay?
If the refs are on his side, he's gonna have a night.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
It's not me saying the game's rigged. I'm just saying it's a large part of his game when you get to the free throw line 22 times. So it's a part of the game. If the refs are gonna call it, if they're gonna call ticky-tack fouls, I think the advantage is Purdue. But if the refs are gonna call a clean game, UConn covers this game easily 6.5. If you were a betting man, what side are you falling on?
Well, I'd rather be wrong. This is where kind of I'd rather be wrong and bet on UConn and lose money than to bet on Purdue and feel like an idiot when they get beat by 20.
Yeah.
I'd rather be. You do feel like, and I know where you were going with this at the very beginning, you do feel like you're walking up to that roulette table and you've seen red hit like 15 times in a row. You definitely feel like, am I an idiot for putting my money on red this one last spin here? But when it hits red again, then ultimately it doesn't matter. It's just one time. And I do think UConn covers. I really do.
I would love for UConn to win and cover. I really would as Big East guy. But I would also I've had this tweet queued up in my brain because every time that UK has won, or the UConn has won and covered along this route, I see this tweet every time.
Oh, yeah.
If you bet $10 on the start of their run last year and you rolled it over, you'd be up to $80,000. And I would love for them to not cover. So I go, if you put $10 on UConn every game and rolled over your winnings, you'd have $0 now. It'd be fun. It'd be fun.
I think that's a fair point. Yeah, it's always easier said than done when you're not actually risking the money, isn't it?
Right.
Could you imagine tonight having to roll that over one more time and being like, I'm going to let this ride one last time? I don't know. All right, we're going to talk Reds here for the last short bit of this show. And I know you have something to add here.
Well, yeah, I just wanted to add one quick thing. And the radio people, you're not going to be able to see this. I'm very sorry, but I keep seeing these pictures. If you're at the Final Four, can you imagine paying $150, $200 for that ticket?
You're just there for the atmosphere.
I'm going to try to paint this picture for you. Imagine being on Mount Everest, and you're still trying to watch down below somebody play basketball. Because that's what's going on when you have this when you have these basketball games in these football arenas. I get it, and you see the picture there. It's sold out. Everybody's going to this game. But at the end of the day, I would really like you know how cool it would be to have that game at Fog Allen? Like a national championship game with 11,000 people all paying, I don't know, God knows how much that ticket would be.
Absurd amount of money there.
$500 a ticket, $1,000 a ticket.
$1,000, yeah.
But I think that's, I don't know. I'm tired of these football arenas hosting this game. I think it's nonsense. But that is it. I believe, Trace, this is our last segment on the radio. This is our last 30 seconds on the radio here. So you have any parting thoughts?
30 seconds on the radio. My parting thoughts is that the Reds do play the Brewers. It's a big series. They got to find a way to get some big hits in critical moments. It's as simple as that. Yep. If you can't get hits when guys are in scoring position, they have a stat for it called RISP. You need to find a way to drive those guys in. If they don't do that, they'll struggle. If they do that, they'll be more than fine. They're on pace to win 90 games currently. They're on pace to win 90 games. I understand that the NL Central right now has a juggernaut and all these things. It'll all average itself out over 162. We shall find out where it all leads. But you can listen to the Reds. The Reds on the radio right here on 1410 Wing AM, which is later today. Can you give the Reds on the radio jingle as we part with our friends in Dayton? The Reds are on the radio. All right, that'll do it for us at Chatterbox. This has been Off the Bench presented by United Dairy Farmers. We'll be back better than ever tomorrow. Take care, everybody.
Speaking of the Reds, I had this very funny clip. I sent it to Casey, and it went kind of viral on Twitter yesterday amongst the Reds fandom. Yes. And it was the Mets. I don't know who Steve Gelbs is, but apparently the Reds have a vending machine full of hot food. Bad idea. That's always I see that every once in a while. It's the worst idea you can imagine. So I'm going to play this video, Trace.
At the ballpark, they have a vending machine?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so this is Steve Gelbs from SNY in the Mets broadcast, and he tried one of our burritos on the air, and we're going to play the whole thing in its entirety because why not?
One of the keys to my job is to give everyone a sense of place who's not here with us in Cincinnati, and you know, I don't want to oversell this or overdo it, but I think that we found maybe the most vile thing that we have experienced in nearly 2 decades on the air. This is a vending machine right outside the truck. I know everybo's really into the new food offerings here at all the ballparks, but they don't really seem to care about our crew. This is what you can get in vending machines. Burritos, hamburgers, chili cheese dogs, tuna fish, and, you know, I have not seen a soul go to that vending machine and take something out. So I thought to myself, it is my job, just as a journalist, to do it for all of you, because I didn't want the guys in our truck to experience. So I've got a cheeseburger here, a chicken salad sandwich, but the one that I heated up before was a chicken, rice, and cheese burrito. Okay? By the way, I checked the ingredients on the back. I counted them, did a rough count. There's over 90 ingredients in this. I'm doing it.
Oh, Steve. What are you doing? I mean this harkens back to Kramer eating that one wrinkled hot dog in the vintage movie theater.
Right.
I mean, I can't even imagine. Are you planning to get on a plane later today?
I am.
Oh, wow.
Did you check the expiration date? I know you checked the ingredients.
I did. Apparently April 13th, but I can't make out the year.
Knowing that food is probably 2057.
Steve, you're like Magellan. You are a true explorer.
Can I just tell you one thing? They talk all the time about how you're supposed to go organic and, look at the ingredients, and if it's real food, it's probably okay. What do you think about this ingredient? Beta-carotene APO carotenool.
Sounds very healthy.
Sounds orange.
It is.
Steve, I need you to try the burger. I mean, if I am trying one of those 2 items or 3 items.
No, the chicken salad.
Oh,
can you imagine how long the mayo's been in there? Come on.
I don't want to hurt him.
All right, the chicken salad says white meat chicken salad on home-style white bread. It says it's in.
Oh, is that it?
That's it. Yeah.
All right.
You didn't try the chicken salad?
I hope not. I hope for his sake he didn't try it. Yeah, that's the Castellini's for you. So.
Oh, come on.
That's
good
Castellini's
broadcasting first and foremost.
That's
There's nothing
elite. That couldn't be better broadcasting.
I think people are taking that the wrong way. They're trying to make fun light of something that they've seen that they thought was preposterous. I think is the term that's used around these offices from time to time. But you know what? You just got to have fun with it. You got to roll with the punches. Do they think that that's the only food that they can get? They clearly know that they could go to the press box and get food. Right. They just seen that vending machine was on the way to wherever they were walking. They looked over at it and they said, "There's no way I just seen what I thought I saw." Right. My favorite part of that, though, really quickly, was the Jaws music, whatever music they were playing behind the vending machine. It was spinning there. So shout out to SNY.
Psycho.
That was good broadcasting.
Psycho's the movie that. But yeah, can you imagine being the person that has to stock that? Like someone's job is to open that thing up and put chicken salad, prepackaged chicken salad, in that revolving carousel of food.
Yeah, that's like a once every 4-month job probably. I mean, because those things can't be selling off the shelves all that fast.
Right.
They probably are. Well, they got one stop every day, and they got 600 of those machines somewhere.
Just looking at who stocked the machine this week? Was that you? I thought that was you. Oh, that's all right. You can leave it in there for another 5 days. It'll be fine.
I don't know, man. Who knows? I'd like to hear the origin story of whoever decided to make the machine in the first place. That would be one hell of a conversation.
Yeah, I've seen those
Could you
before.
imagine?
I'm
saying who started the very first one? Who came out and said, "You know what we're going to do today, Reed? I got a business opportunity. We're going to try to sell hot food in a vending machine." And somebody was like, "Hell yeah. Start drawing up the designs now. Let's get that machine made."
I think they've got them at Hollywood Casino. I'm almost certain they do. And I was tempted
to go. It's normally cold sandwiches.
Yeah. So those were cold, and I think you warm them up. But either way, it's preposterous. That's just how the Reds organization runs. So shout out to them. I was watching the series this weekend, and I've come to a conclusion, Trace.
Please.
I'm concerned about Fernando Cruz. Last week, I said he could be our closer. This week, I'm saying he should be cut from the team. I've tried watching Fernando Cruz. When he's on, he's on. But when he's off, he's not touching the strike zone. Not even a little bit. So now I'm out on Fernando Cruz, and my trustworthy relievers, that list gets down to Brent Suter. I think he's it. Brent Suter's my only trustworthy reliever. I think that's the only name I've left. And Ian Jabot, whenever he comes back.
I'll tell you what, man. Doing 162 games with you is a treat.
It is a treat.
Yeah, it's quite the treat.
I was positive yesterday. I had a positive tweet.
Can somebody in the chat do some math for me real fast? Can someone give me the math on what the equivalent is of one baseball game in terms of NFL football?
It would be like 8 games.
What? No. What is one game divided by 162 in an actual single football game? Are we talking
well, if you do it about 8 games,
what is it?
it'd be half of a quarter. So like.
So we're talking like, no.
Yeah, you're making it clear.
One game in baseball, right?
Correct.
Is
the equivalent
to about half of a quarter.
What time in one game of football?
Half of a quarter. Half a quarter.
No, because a half a quarter that's only 8 games. 100.
Right.
That's what he just said.
Right.
No, I'm obviously not doing a very good job.
You're doing a terrible job because he just explained it. It's
Thank you. 37 seconds, Nate. Thank you.
37 seconds of a game?
Thank you, Nate. That's what
I
I
don't
was
think that's
looking
right.
for. No, watching. This is the equivalent that I was trying to make. If you were watching a football game with Elliot, and he does the same thing he does with Reds baseball,
Sure.
over the course of a season,
Right.
every single take that he has, that he comes up with, is basically watching 37 seconds of an NFL game.
I want to break this down. I want to make sure, and we're gonna sound dumb on this air, that we are
Sure.
on the same thing here.
Yes.
I don't
All
think
right,
we
so
are.
when there's 17 games in an NFL season and 162 games
There's
in
17,
Major League Baseball.
I'm not talking about 17 games. That's where the disconnect is. I'm talking about if I were to sit down and watch one football game with you, what's the equivalent timeline of what his takes are over a single game of the course of 162, which is you do 162 divided by one single football game.
Oh, well, that's just silly.
It's 37 seconds.
Okay.
Okay, so the first 37 seconds, the other team returned to kickoff for a touchdown.
Okay.
So that's what we're talking about here.
Well,
And then I'm freaking out. Can you not freaked out if the other team scores one of
Right,
those
I
on
mean,
you?
if they throw a bomb, 50-yard bomb down the field to start the game, yeah, you could freak out a little bit. You could hit the panic button.
Nate corrected himself. It's 22 seconds. So I'm watching an NFL game, and the first 22 seconds, I'm not liking what I'm seeing.
Right, then you're already freaking out. Which,
Yeah,
to be fair, I think is actually a real thing. I think that he, I don't know if it was, maybe it was Sean. I don't know if it was Reed, but one of those two have a friend who's like that, and it's every single play.
Sure.
It's always something like, oh, they should have done this or they should have done that.
Sure.
It's just.
Are
you that guy, Elliot?
I am that.
Ellie Rue,
Yeah.
can you, off the top of your head, guess who has the lowest ERA in this young Red season from the bullpen?
Who has the lowest ERA from the Reds this season?
Reds bullpen.
It would almost certainly have to be. I mean, TJ Anton doesn't count, right?
Correct.
So it would be Brent Suter.
Justin Wilson is one. Brent Suter has the second highest.
Second highest?
Yeah. Only trailing Alexis Diaz.
Interesting.
Buck Farmer, Fernando Cruz, Lucas Sims, all better.
Interesting.
I
guess that goes on appearances, though.
It's innings pitched divided by earned runs given up.
Well,
by
I
the
know
way,
how it's calculated.
Trace, you kept saying stuff about TJ Antone, and I hope he's whatever.
He's not going to be okay. I don't mean to be like overly brash about it, but the one thing that I think that we're all doing right now is just trying to beat around the old bush, as they say, and I think that it's safe to say that Antone's done. But go ahead.
But even before this, you would say like you disagreed with him trying to push his body, trying to get back to MLB because at some point your body. Would you not do the same? Like if your body is capable of making millions of dollars, I would do everything in my. Like if my body could make $1 million from some talent that it has, I would push it. I would exhaust it to make that money. And we're not talking like he's going to lose his legs. He's not going to amputate an arm. Like,
yeah, I don't know. Maybe I had said something that was a little more not what I actually believe. I never have said that I felt like he shouldn't try to come back. I was more or less saying that, it's just a lot to ask of. If you have the mental fortitude to do it, by all means, go for it. I'm saying if I were in his position, I don't think that I would have it in me to want to try to do that all again.
Even if you can
for
make
the
$1 million?
inevitability,
Even if you make a million.
I guess if it's a money thing, sure. But I'm just saying for the inevitability, it seems like, again, the risk the risk reward there is just so crazy. Like the amount of effort, work he has to put in, I guess I'll say this. He will never have regrets, which is always a great thing to do in life. If you can just leave it all out there and you could say, you know what could have, should have been, I don't know, but I know this, I gave it everything I have. That would be more of that, in my opinion, that would be more of a motivating factor than anything else. But yeah, money is obviously a big part of it.
My question is too, and I'm not belittling, like I guess I am intense, but I'm not trying to. Like, what's the worst quality of life that he has from exhausting his arm? Like, he's still going to be able to move his arm. It might hurt a little bit. Like, it's not like if he tries this again, they got to amputate his arm.
No, you're right. I don't know if there's anything in particular that maybe you could argue as to why he shouldn't have come back. I meant more.
If we're talking like leg injuries, to where like he might like
not be able to walk
right. Like you just keep tearing up your knee and now you can't walk right.
Yeah, I have no problem with coming back.
That's different. Like, it's an arm. Like,
and I also think we were talking about like risk versus the reward earlier when you offered me my salary for $200.
Correct.
Being able to make X amount of dollars in Major League Baseball, be a professional athlete, be the top of the world, that's, in my opinion, worth it to risk maybe damage to your nerves and arm ligaments going forward. That, to me, that's worth that risk.
I'm not saying it's not. I guess my point, the whole thing was, and maybe I had said something at one point that led Reed to believe what he just said. I don't know if I ever really believed that as much as I believed that it was hard to convince me that you put that much time, effort, and energy into something that I think was going to ultimately end up with what actually happened. And that's not me like wanting to say, oh, look, I was right, because I'm not. That's not what I mean by that. I'm just saying that it seemed inevitable that this was the end result. It seemed inevitable that when you get back after 2 Tommy Johns, you're just not going to be what you used to be, and you're going to be disappointed in the end. And that's kind of what I meant by it. Now, to be fair, though, if you would have proposed the opposite viewpoint of that, which I just did myself, and I think that I could convince myself to do it again, which would be you'd have regrets. You'd have regrets. I think of all the stupid things that I have regrets of maybe in my life, I do think back on this a little bit. It's that I didn't try to play college basketball my last year when I was at Urbana when I had the chance to do that. But I was burnt out. I was tired of being in college sports. I wanted to be a kid. I wanted to just have my summers off. And I think it's easier said now because I'm way out of it. Mm-hmm. But I do look back and I think it would have been cool to say that I might have rode the bench, but Coach asked me if I was interested in playing, and I just was, I don't know. I did not want to be conditioned. I did not want to run, if we're being honest. I did not want to get myself back in that type of shape, and I just said no. But looking back, if I could do it all again, I don't know. I think I tell myself I should have done it.
My brother Matt played 2 sports in college, golf and baseball, and he told me how did you, because they were the same season.
Right.
Like,
that seems crazy.
How did you determine where you were going to go that day? And he's like, it was pretty simple. If we had conditioning, I was going to go to the other sport. I was like, fair enough. All right, that sounds great.
I'm going to ask you guys to end the show. I'm going to ask you guys one question, and it's a new game. It's called Overreact or Proper Reaction. So I'm going to say a fact about this weekend series, and you're going to tell me if my reaction is appropriate or it's overreaction.
Fair.
The Reds made 78 outs during their 3-game set with the Mets. Out of those 78 outs, 32 of those were strikeouts. 41% of our outs this series were via the strikeout. I think that is very troubling. Very troubling. Is that overreaction or proper reaction?
I think it's a proper reaction, yeah. At some point, you got to put the ball in play. And I think this team has a lot of swing and miss guys, yeah.
We've talked about quality at-bats for a long time. There's 2 guys that we consistently say give us quality at-bats.
Yeah.
And again, shout out to Will Benson, shout out to Spencer Steer. Will Benson does strike out at a decent clip. But saying that, I know what I'm going to get with Will Benson. That's at least 4 or 5 pitches. Elly De La Cruz, I was there Friday night when he literally didn't take the bat off his shoulder with the bases loaded and a chance to win the game.
I remember.
Those at-bats can't happen. Those at-bats can't happen. I know we're young into the season and bad games happen, yada, yada, yada. At some point, the strikeout rate's got to go down for this team. You have to put the ball in play. That's the only way you get guys on third base, second base in. That's what we were great at last year, I felt like. And obviously, when Elly can steal second and third in 3 seconds, that helps as well. but you have to put the ball in play. You have to. 41% strikeout rate for an entire series is abysmal, and it's honestly pathetic. But I'm not gonna overreact to it. I'm gonna be calm, and I'm gonna say tonight against some guy named Ashby.
Yeah.
Aaron Ashby.
I think you could leave the B out and maybe change one of the letters, and I think that's what he is.
How about that? And that is what we're going to start with our new winning streak tonight. So the Reds are back. Also, for cherry on top.
Some are asking in the chat. Might be a guy that be named Nick Kirby would ask: is 5-4 the equivalent of having a kickoff return and a touchdown?
No. 5-4 would not be that equivalent. Yes, 0-9 would be that equivalent. But again, 5-4, good start. Let's keep it rolling. Let's not lose series that we can't.
You won week 1, right? I think I did the division. Yeah. Every 9 games is the equivalent of 1 football game. You won week 1.
You won week 1. The schedule is going to get significantly harder than what we've had so far, though. Like, the schedule's going to turn here in a second, and we're not playing the Nationals needing miracles.
Very much agree.
So, we're 5-4. Let's not pretend how we won some of those games. But again, a win is a win is a win is a win. Cherry on top today, I have a fun fact for you. We have a on this day. We have a fun on this day to end the day with the cherry on top. Presented by United Dairy Farmers. The greatest dairy farmers in the world. On this day in 2008, Johnny Cueto struck out 8, giving him 18 strikeouts and no walks in his first 2 major league outings. No pitcher has done that since at least 1900. That was on this day in 2008. Johnny Cueto. Johnny Cueto. Little fun nugget for you. And Jeff Holt chimes in. The Reds suck. Thank you, Jeff.
I didn't say it.
I did well.
I'll give my cherry on top tomorrow. This is Masters Week. We'll have a little Masters discussion perhaps after there are other things that aren't more pressing in the landscape of college basketball and obviously more. But this has been Off the Bench. We do have boxed lunch for our members. So thank you to all of our members. As always, you're very much appreciated. We thank you, everybody, for liking the stream, sharing the stream, telling a friend about the stream. What's that old jingle? I won't give out a free ad, but it's like what is it? Tell a friend and hold on. It's something in the Miami Valley. They definitely know. Bring a buddy, tell a friend. You know the advertisement. If you don't, then that just means I'm incredibly old at this point, and that's part of it. So I know the chat knows. And that's all that matters. Thank you for watching Off the Bench. Box lunch is next. Have a beautiful, total eclipse today. Science. Take care, everybody.